Let me tell you about the most dangerous, most valuable, most ridiculous treasure in human history. It wasn't gold. It wasn't diamonds. It wasn't a crown jewel. It was a tiny, wrinkled black seed. A peppercorn. Yes, the same thing you just shook onto your fries without thinking. But once upon a time, that little seed started wars, sank ships, built an empire, and made people do things so crazy you won't believe it. And I'm going to tell you everything. But first, close your eyes. Imagine you live in a cold, gray castle in England. It's the year 1400. No fridge. No freezer. Your meat from last week. It's turning green. It smells like a monster's armpit. You can't eat it. You're hungry. Then a merchant shows up with a tiny bag of black seeds. He rubs one between his fingers, drops it into some warm meat, and suddenly, magic. The smell is gone. The taste is incredible. You ask how much. He says, "One bag costs more than your horse, your sword, and your house combined." That was pepper. Black gold. Now, where did it come from? Nobody in Europe knew for sure. Arab traders told wild stories. Pepper grows in valleys guarded by poisonous snakes. You have to burn the forest to make the peppers fall. Lies. All lies. Because the Arabs wanted to keep the secret. They bought pepper from India, carried it across deserts on camels, then sold it to Italians, who sold it to the rest of Europe. Every time it changed hands, the price doubled, then doubled again. By the time pepper reached a king's table, it was worth more than silver. And the kings were angry. They said, "We're tired of paying fortunes to middlemen. We want to find this pepper ourselves." By sea. The first to try was Portugal. They sent a man named Vasco da Gama. Imagine leaving home, knowing you might never come back. He took 4 small ships and sailed south, hugging the coast of Africa. His men cried. They begged to turn around. Storms ripped their sails. Sickness killed half the crew. But Vasco kept going. He rounded the bottom of Africa, a place so dangerous they called it the Cape of Storms, and sailed into the Indian Ocean. After 10 months, he saw land. India. He stumbled onto a beach and asked a local merchant, "Where can I find pepper?" The merchant laughed and pointed at a bush covered in peppercorns, growing like wild berries. Vasco fell to his knees. He filled his ships and sailed home. When he arrived, the king of Portugal wept. He gave Vasco a hero's welcome. Portugal had found the secret route. For the next 100 years, they controlled the pepper trade. They built forts. They sank Arab ships. They didn't ask nicely. They took what they wanted. But Portugal made a mistake. They wanted more than pepper. They heard about even rarer spices, nutmeg and cloves, growing on a handful of tiny islands in Indonesia. Islands so small you could walk around them in an hour. The Spice Islands. Portugal tried to take them, but they were too far away. Then came the Dutch. And the English. Now the story gets really wild. The Dutch and English didn't send kings. They sent something new. Private companies with their own armies, their own warships, and permission to start wars. The English East India Company was one of them. Sounds boring, right? A company. But imagine if your local grocery store had cannons. That was them. Both the Dutch and the English wanted the Spice Islands. Especially one tiny island called Run. Run was covered in nutmeg trees. Nutmeg was worth more than gold because Europeans believed it could cure the plague. A bag of nutmeg could make you richer than a duke. So the English built a small settlement on Run. Then the Dutch showed up with 9 ships and 1,000 soldiers. They said, "Leave." The English said, "No." So the Dutch attacked. They burned. They killed. They took the island. The English survivors fled into the jungle. The English back in London were furious. But they couldn't fight the Dutch. The Dutch had a better navy. So they did something strange. They sat down and made a deal. The Dutch said, "Keep your little island of Run. We don't care, but we'll give you something else instead. A small, cold, swampy island on the other side of the world. It has mosquitoes, it's foggy, and the only thing living there are beavers and angry tribes. It's called Manhattan. We call our little town New Amsterdam." The English looked at each other. They had never seen Manhattan. They didn't know what it was, but they were tired of fighting. So they said, "Fine. Deal." They traded the nutmeg island of Run for a swamp. Everyone laughed. "The English are fools," they said. "Nutmeg is a fortune. Manhattan is nothing." But then the English renamed that swamp. They called it New York. And New York grew into one of the greatest cities in the world, a center of trade, money, and power. That one crazy trade, a tiny island for a swamp, helped build the British Empire in America. And the Dutch, they kept Run. But today, almost no one remembers Run. It's a quiet, forgotten dot in the ocean, while New York became a legend. But the story doesn't end there. Because back in India, the English East India Company was watching. They saw that the Mughal Empire, which ruled India, was getting weak. And they saw pepper. Pepper still grew everywhere on the Malabar coast. So the company started building forts. They hired Indian soldiers. They called them sepoys. They made friends with some local kings and fought others. They bribed, they tricked, they attacked. Step by step, they took control of the pepper-growing regions. And here's the secret. Pepper was their first fortune. Before tea, before cotton, before opium, there was pepper. The money from pepper bought them ships. The ships brought more soldiers. The soldiers won more land. Within 50 years, the English East India Company didn't just control pepper, they controlled almost all of India. A private company ruled a country of millions. And that country became the jewel of the British Empire. Without pepper, none of that happens. No money, no army, no India, no empire. By the 1800s, Britain ruled 1/4 of the entire world. The sun never set on the British flag. And it all started because people wanted to make their meat taste less disgusting. But now comes the biggest twist of all. Once the British controlled India's pepper farms, pepper became cheap. Incredibly cheap. A poor factory worker in London could buy a bag for a few pennies. Pepper went from black gold to just pepper. Everyone forgot. They forgot the sailors who died of scurvy. They forgot the islands traded for swamps. They forgot the wars and the greed and the madness. They just shook it on their eggs and said, "Pass the salt." So next time you're eating dinner and you reach for that little pepper shaker, stop for 1 second. Hold it up. That tiny seed built an empire. That tiny seed changed the world. And that tiny seed is sitting right there on your table, pretending to be ordinary. But now you know the truth. Thanks for listening. If you want more stories about tiny things that changed everything, hit subscribe. And next time someone calls pepper boring, you can smile and say, "You have no idea